Okay. Okay, now what we are going to do next is that we need to actually write a method whereby when we click this calculate button, okay, it will actually execute a very specific method. So what do you do with this? Okay, now to create that, okay, you go to this button, okay, double click this. So double click this. Now when you double click this, now the window will shift to webform1.aspx.cs. So this is the part where you actually write your C# method code here. So for the toolbox, I'm going to actually just hide this. Okay, now here. Okay, now the first thing that we need to do is we need to declare the variables. Okay, why do we need the variables? Okay, now if you have a look at all this, okay, basically what we are going to do is that, okay, we want to actually store or assign the values that we key in. Now let us assume that we are going to key in the marks will be, perhaps there will be integer, there will also be like decimal place. For example, the quiz is like 75.4. Okay, so what we are going to do is that we are going for each of these text boxes, this input, we are going to assign a variable, which later on we will manipulate this. Okay, now in terms of the text, okay, whatever that you key in, okay, in the text box will be considered a text, meaning that a text is actually equivalent to a string. Although you type in number, for example, the marks 75, it will not be 75 number, but it will become a 75 string. So it will consider as a string. So, however, what we actually really want is this is decimal place. Okay, now for that, okay, let us switch again to this. We want to declare a variable. Okay, now for decimal place numbers, okay, the it is recommended for you to use double type. Okay, okay, now when you type double, you will notice that there is two selection. One double with a small d, the lowercase d, and one is the uppercase d. For example, this is, okay, tap, okay, this becomes double. Or we can have this one, okay, this is double. Okay, basically you can choose either one. Okay, now the lowercase, all the lowercase, this is what we call the primitive type. Okay, why it is called the primitive type? Because this is actually the syntax that C language programmers since the yesteryears has been using. So what Microsoft did for C# is that to retain the lowercase, but within the .NET, okay, the standard is actually this one. Okay, this is actually the actual standard. Okay, but again, okay, many programmers, because they are used to it, they will type. So this is acceptable. So because I am from a generation that comes during the C language era, so basically it is more comfortable for me to use the primitive type, okay, which is the lowercase, which is basically you can choose the D as an uppercase. You can do that, okay. But in my example, most of my examples are using actually the primitive type. Okay, now to declare, we have, this is the we have other types of which is suitable for decimal, such as we have decimal, we have float. But to make things easier, okay, and we don't want a lot of trouble, we use a double. Okay, so it is recommended. Now double. Okay, now just now for each of these, I'm going to actually create variable. For example, this one, this text box, I will use variable quiz, test, assignment, project, lab exercise, and final exam. Okay, so these are the variable names that I'm going to use. So here, so similar to C language and also Java, so I'm going to put in quiz. So normally I use all lowercase for variable. The second one is test. Then I have assignment. We have project. Okay, we have lab exercise. Okay, have final exam. Okay, now this is okay. Now for at the end of each statement there must be a semicolon. Okay, now here we want to display now in addition to the text, we also want to display, okay, you can see that there is this overall mark. Okay, now overall mark we display onto the label. This is the output, so we need one variable for this. So I'm going to add this here at the end. Okay, this is overall. Okay, and I'm going to have another one for the purpose of, okay, let me scroll this here, R overall. So this is the rounded one. Now the purpose of this, because later on when we have the overall mark, for example, just now I give you one example, 79.5. Okay, we want to retain the value 79.5, but for the grading I want the 79.5 to be rounded, so meaning that it will become 80. This is for the grading purposes, but I do not want to overwrite the original marks, so I create another variable, R overall. So this is R overall. Okay, so we will look into the use later on. Okay, now we have another variable, a string, which is the grade. Okay, the grade, we are using a string type. Okay, now this is the declaration of the variable. Here, if you think that this is too long, okay, you can just go here and enter. So this will not give you an error. Okay, no problem to put in like this. Okay, okay, this is the original one. Okay, now like I have mentioned just now, meaning that whatever that you actually enter into the text box will be considered a string or a text. So for you to take this text to store into a double type variable, for example, such as quiz. Okay, let's say we take the first one, quiz. So you need to convert, okay, from a string to a double. Okay, for example, let's say I have quiz. Okay, this is quiz. You will notice that if you have declared this quiz here, when you type, it will give you several options. Okay, now this is our variable just now, quiz. Okay, now because to convert from a string to a double, so there is this double type. Okay, we have this double dot. Okay, now there is a method. Okay, now when you click this dot, there is the selection that you can choose. Now we are interested this one, pass, P-A-R-S-E. Pass meaning that it will go to the string and it will take the values of the string, okay, and convert into a double. So here I press that, pass. Okay, now I'm going to put in, okay, now you can see that there is this wriggly red, so meaning that this is error. Okay, this green, you see, this is not error, but meaning it shows that it has been assigned but has not been used. Okay, this is the green. Okay, red is error. Okay, now within this one, what we need to have within this bracket or parenthesis. Okay, the British call this bracket, the American call this parenthesis. It's the same thing. So within this bracket, okay, what we want to take is that the text, okay, for example, this one, this is TXT quiz, the text of TXT quiz. Okay, so the text of TXT quiz is written like this, TXT. Okay, now it will give you a set selection here. Now we are interested in quiz, but we want the text, so we click dot. Okay, and there is this text, select text. So meaning that we have TXT quiz dot text, meaning that this will represent the things, the characters that you enter into the text box, and it will convert to a double by using this method, double dot pass, and it will store, be assigned to this variable quiz. Now similarly, so what I'm going to do now is that I'm going to actually just copy a little bit, a few of this, and I'm going to actually, okay, first, okay, now here quiz, so I'm going to actually put in this test, double dot pass, so this will be TXT test. Okay, okay, next we have assignment. This will be TXT assignment. Okay, we have a project. This will be TXT project. Okay, we have a lab exercise. Okay, this is lab exercise. Okay, this will be TXT lab exercise. Okay, we have final exam, and this will be TXT final exam. Okay, one common mistake is that many students, because of perhaps inexperience, they forgot to put in the dot text. Okay, another error is that sometimes they put this as lowercase. You can see it. Okay, this is case sensitive. You see that the T lowercase, it gives you an error. Okay, so this is case sensitive. For C#, this should be uppercase. Okay, now this is actually meaning that now what we have here, all this is that it will actually take the values, the string values from the text boxes that we enter the marks, and it will convert into double type and store or assign into these double type variables. Okay, now next is that once we have all these values, we can do our calculation to calculate the overall. So to calculate the overall, okay, the formula is, okay, here overall equals, okay, now I'm using a bracket because do not want to confuse myself. Okay, now quiz. Okay, now quiz, the total mark is upon 100, so this becomes upon 100, and this will be 10%, so meaning that 10 marks. Okay, 10 marks it will contribute because the overall will be upon 100, so this is 10%. Okay, 10% meaning that this is 10. Okay, next. Okay, we have the test. We have test. Okay, now test is also upon 100, and the percentage is 20%, so 20 marks overall, so this is multiply with 20 plus. Okay, next we have assignment. Now this is assignment. Now assignment is upon 30, so we divide by 30 and we'll multiply this with 10 because the assessment distribution or the percentage is 10%. Okay, plus. Okay, let's say that I go to next line. Okay, because this is too long. Okay, now project. Okay, we have the project is upon 30. This is the maximum mark, and this is 15%, so multiply with 15. Add, we have lab exercise. Okay, lab exercise is 10 marks, 10%, 10 marks for the total marks, divide by 10, and we'll multiply this with 5. Okay, this is 5%. And finally we have the final exam. We have, okay, this is the final exam. Okay, this is final exam. Now final exam is upon 100, and we'll multiply this with 40. Now there is a semicolon here. Okay, now this is the end to calculate the overall. Okay, now once we have calculated the overall, we have the marks here. Okay, we want these marks that we have calculated, we want to display this. Okay, we want to display this where? We want to display this here, this one. Okay, onto this label, and we want to display to format the values to 2 decimal place. So what we need to do here is that, okay, now the name of the label just now is LBL overall, so LBL overall. Okay, now this is LBL overall. Okay, to display a value onto the label, we need to type in text. So meaning that this is the property to allow something to be displayed onto a label. So dot text equals to, okay, now we have overall. Okay, just now we have this overall, this overall. Now this is the same variable overall, but this overall, this is a double. This one is considered a string, so we need to convert this double back into a string form. Okay, so to convert this, we have a method toString. So this is the method toString. Okay, now this is the method toString, meaning that we convert numbers, okay, numbers to a string. We have T and S uppercase. Okay, however, there is no formatting here, but for us to format this into a 2 decimal place, we can type in 0.00. So meaning that this will be displayed, for example, if let's say the overall is 90 marks, it will be displayed as 90.00. If it is let's say 45.125, it will become 45.13. So this is the display. Okay, let us test this first. We haven't actually calculated the grade, but I'm going to test this. Okay, let us run something here. Okay, let us key in some values here. Let's say this is 75. Okay, let's say the test will be 65.5. The assignment will be 22.4. The project, let's say 17. The lab exercise will be 9. And the final exam will be 67.5. Okay, so if I click this calculate button, you have this value 68.07. So this is actually format. It is formatted to 2 decimal place. Okay, for the grade, we haven't calculated the grade yet. Okay, let me close the browser. Okay. Now, for the last part of this exercise, what I'm going to do is that I'm going to actually write the to calculate the grade. So here, okay, similar that I've mentioned just now, that if we have the borderline marks like 79.5, we want to round this for the grading. So it is not A minus, but it is A. So what I'm going to do is that, let's say I'm going to use this R overall. Okay, this is the variable that we have declared just now. Okay, now for us to round this, okay, just now this rounding is just formatting, meaning that the values does not change, just the appearance. But this one, I'm going to actually change the value. So here there is this class math. This is the math class. Okay, this is a math class. Math dot, we have a list of mathematical method here to calculate. So what we are interested is round. Math dot round. Okay, now there is a parameters here. Okay, now if we want to round this to 0 decimal place, we can have overall comma 0. Okay, meaning that it will take the value of overall here. This is the value that we are going to round, and this is decimal place, so 0 decimal place. Okay, if you want this to be 1, this becomes 1. Okay, this is the proper type, a proper way to write this. But you can also, if you actually just put in overall here without the second argument, it will by default assume that it will become 0. So this is what we call method overloading. So this is one concept of object-oriented programming. So we can have like this. Okay, now this is, or we can have like this. So this is the same. Okay. Okay, now just to highlight, okay, although these are overall, okay, although this is appears to be rounded, but the type of data stored here is still a double. Okay, it is not an integer. So if you declare, for example, R overall here, if you declare this as an integer, you use math.round, it will give an error. Okay, so make sure that if you are using this math.round method, okay, it will return the type double. Okay, now how do we actually calculate the grades? Okay, so to calculate the grade, okay, let me scroll this. Okay, we use a simple if. Okay, now if, if, okay, now if this is similar to if you are familiar with PHP, C language, Java, the syntax is very similar. So here we have R overall, okay, larger and equals to 80. Okay, now this is the actually the conditions here. Okay, now because we assume that above 80 and we will not enter more than 100, so we will just use this larger equal. Okay, but if you want to use, for example, the boundaries, upper boundaries, you can use also this is n. Okay, n condition, you can use overall less or equals 100. Okay, so if you have this multiple conditions within one condition, okay, this is, you can use this n. But for the purpose of this, I do not find any necessity to use this. Okay, so I'm just going to use overall 80. We have grade equals to, this is grade A. Okay, now if the statement within this if is just one statement, okay, it is not required for you to use a curly bracket. But if you have, for example, a second line here, so you need to put in the curly bracket in between. Okay, for example, we have something else here. Okay, meaning that it is compulsory for you to use the curly bracket. But if this is just one statement, no need to use the curly bracket. So for the purpose of our example here, because we only have one statement, so I let this be like this. Okay, now here we can use else if. Okay, so else if. Okay, now this is most of the statement here, these are case sensitive, so it will not accept uppercase. Okay, so here I'm going to use R overall larger or equal 75. Okay, I have grade equals to A minus. Okay, again, because we are using else if. Okay, else and if are actually two different statements. Okay, so for example, in PHP, else if is one statement, can be one, can be two statement, but this is else if. Okay, there's no necessity for you to put in the upper ceiling here. Okay, now here, because to save time, what I'm going to do is that I'm going to copy and paste several of these. Okay, and I will change accordingly. Okay, now we have A minus. Okay, now next we have 70. So this will be B plus. Okay, next we have 65. This will be a B. Next we have 60. This will be a C plus. This is a B minus, sorry. Next we have 55. 55 will be a C plus. Okay, we have 50. 50 will be a C. We have 45. 45 is a C minus. We have 40. 40 is a D. And finally we have else. Okay, now this will be grade equals to this is an F. Okay. Okay, so this is actually how we use the if, okay, if and else if to actually to calculate the grade based on the rounded overall. And once we have done this, okay, what we can do next is to assign that particular values within this grade to the label. So the label name just now is LBL grade. Okay, because we want to display the values onto a label, so we need to use this text. Now this is equals to grade. Okay, now because grade is already a string, so here no need for you to use toString, because toString is to convert from number to string. But here, because grade is itself a string, no conversion is required. Okay, so if we are to run this again, okay, let us put in some values just now. So I'm going to actually just use the values that we have actually entered just now. You can enter any value that you like. Now I'm going to click calculate, and we have this particular overall and grade. Okay, so but of course you see that there is a possibility of, by having just this, you can see that if I do enter this wrongly, for example 125, now 125 is larger than 100, okay, it will not give an error, it will still calculate. Okay, but logically this is wrong because it should be only 100. So how do we actually control this? Okay, so here this we will cover into the next lab exercise, which is input validation. How do we incorporate the input validation features within ASP.NET so that we can control what are the range of the values, or perhaps we don't want anyone to leave the text box empty before calculating. So these are the things that we are going to do in our next lab exercise, and the next lab exercise will continue from the things that we have done here. Okay, thank you very much. So for input validation, please refer to the next learning video.